Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We got a big video today. I'm going to be ranking all the Leonardo DiCaprio movies that I have seen. I've seen about 15 of them, including Killers of the Flower Moon, which just got released. My review is up on the channel right now. Make sure to go check that out. But let's get right to the tier list. Alright, before we get started, make sure you leave a like on this video. It helps out a lot. But yeah, we're going to be ranking all 15 Leonardo DiCaprio movies that I have seen based off my own opinion on how great I think the film is. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Leave your own rankings. I'd love to take a look at those. But yeah, I've only seen 15 of them because some of its early films I couldn't find on any streaming services. I just watched all the ones I could find on streaming or the ones that I did own on physical media, and those are the ones I watched. So 15 of them, including Killers of the Flower Moon. And the first one we're going to be talking about is The Aviator, the true story about Howard Hughes, the biopic with Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese teaming up. That's going to be something we're going to be talking about throughout the whole video because they teamed up many times. But you know, this is one I first watched earlier this year in like January or February, and I was kind of blown away about the technical aspects of this film, but also about the story, because I thought the story was made in such a way where you can understand it and you can really go through Howard Hughes' life. It kind of reminded me about Oppenheimer in a way. When I watched Oppenheimer, those both kind of reminded me of the same thing. But Howard Hughes is a very interesting man because he liked everything to be perfect. He suffered from OCD. You know, he was behind all these films, all these about making all these planes and all that, and he basically wanted everything to be perfect, so he like remade films to make them perfect. It cost him a lot of money, and he suffered from that his whole entire life, and everything just went downhill the older he got, which is so interesting to see. But it was also so sad to see how his life kind of turned upside down, got worse because OCD and many other things that happened to him in this life. But I thought Leonardo DiCaprio gave a great performance in this film. I really did like his performance. I loved everything like in the sky when they were up in the planes. I thought those shots looked amazing. I love what Martin Scorsese was able to do with that, and the set design, beautiful. Costume design, beautiful too. Cate Blanchett, she actually won an Oscar for this film. I didn't think her performance was that amazing, but I thought it was really great. I was really surprised when I heard she won an Oscar for this and not Leonardo DiCaprio, because I would have given the Oscar for this film. I thought he was terrific in portraying Howard Hughes, and I thought the film as a whole was paced really well. I love the whole feel of the film, and the story I really got along with. I thought the second act was a little slow for me, but the first act and third act were so strong. I thought the movie as a whole was really great. So The Aviator, I want to put in the great tier. Next up, we have Gangs of New York. This is the Daniel Day-Lewis film with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's kind of like a crime, kind of like gangster movie where Daniel Day-Lewis has like control over so many gangs in this movie. And you know, this one is a very long film, I would say. I first watched this one just like a week or two ago because I'm trying to prepare for this video, watch all these 15 movies in the last 2 weeks. It is kind of difficult to remember everything about these movies when you watch so many of them, but I did watch this one for the first time, and I'm kind of having a hard time remembering this one because this isn't my favorite Scorsese film. It sits at the bottom of his rankings, but I haven't even seen all of his films. But I would say that this one kind of sits at the bottom because not everything works in this film for me. The performances work a lot. You know, the performances are amazing. Daniel Day-Lewis, he always brings in a great performance. He's Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the greatest actors alive in my opinion. Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, brings in a great performance. I didn't really care for the accents in this movie. Of course, Leonardo DiCaprio, I didn't really believe his accent in this movie, because if you'd compare his accent in this movie to The Departed, where he gives a great Brooklyn accent, I didn't really care for his accent in Gangs of New York. I thought it was a little silly, and his hairstyle was really silly. But I will say the costume design in this movie was stellar. I love the costumes in it. It is also a true story, but I heard that a lot of it is like really changed for the movie because they do change stuff for a movie. But you know, I wasn't really enjoying the story that much in this one. I thought it moved really slow. I thought this is one of Martin Scorsese's poorly paced movies, because I think that Martin Scorsese has a really good pace with his movies, but I don't think this one works as a whole. I think this one could have been like 30 minutes shorter and it could have worked the same. But I do love these revenge stories, how Leonardo DiCaprio's character wanted to get revenge on Daniel Day-Lewis's character for killing his father at the beginning of the movie. But I thought it just took so long to get there that I wasn't really with it in the third act. But I will say the first act and the second act were very good. You know, I thought that the ending came a little fast, but you know, they had to get there because the movie would have been so much longer. I heard the rough cut was over 3 hours or so, and I was like, no, I could not handle 3 hours of this movie. It was just too long for me. But I will say Gangs of New York is still a good film. Next up is Romeo plus Juliet. This is the Baz Luhrmann film. They teamed up 2 times with this and The Great Gatsby, which we'll get to later. But Romeo plus Juliet, it's not Romeo and Juliet. This one is such an odd film for me because I watched it for the first time in freshman year of high school. You know, when they're teaching you about Romeo and Juliet, you read the book, you watch the original movie, and you watch this one. And this one just took me off guard because when I first watched it, I didn't know who Baz Luhrmann was, and I wasn't prepared for like the extreme cutting of the movie, extreme editing, extreme like costume design, extreme acting, because this one has some extreme acting in it. Like, holy crap, everyone was just saying some very random stuff at random times. The energy levels were shifting so much, and I don't know, the script of this, it was kind of written like a contemporary play. It didn't work for me at the beginning, but I was kind of getting more used to it at the end. It was just so weird to kind of adapt to this movie and the feel of it because they're adapting it for like the modern times, and I don't think that worked. You know, Romeo and Juliet just doesn't work in the modern times because it's such a weird story. I don't really agree with, you know, the story of Romeo and Juliet. You know, it's kind of touching, kind of nice, kind of romantic, but at the same time, I think it is kind of stupid. I'm not really going to be one of those people that obsesses over the story of Romeo and Juliet, but I did like the performances of Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes in this one. I thought they had great chemistry, but I thought that this one was also a little long. I thought the second act dragged, but I did like the third act and the first act. And, you know, as I said, the script was weak for me at the beginning, but I got more used to it. And I thought that the costume design and the set design was really brilliant, even though I didn't agree with it being set in like modern times. And can we believe that Paul Rudd was in this movie? I was surprised to see him. You know, at the beginning they showed all the cast and it's like that kind of movie. I was surprised to see that Paul Rudd was in this movie. I didn't really expect him to be in this kind of movie, but you know, he's Paul Rudd. He looks the same as he always does, and I was enjoying him in this movie, and I thought he did great. But the movie as a whole wasn't great. As I said, I think it's poorly paced, and the story of Romeo and Juliet just doesn't do it for me. Even though I think it's beautiful at times, it's just not a great movie. So Romeo and Juliet, it's going in the okay tier. Next up is Catch Me If You Can, the true story of Frank Abagnale Jr. And you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, I will say he loves to do his true stories. He loves to do kind of his biopics and, you know, true stories, which I really do like from him. You know, it's cool to get out of your comfort zone and just not stick in those fake movies, I would say, but you know, go for these true stories because some of them are really epic, like The Aviator and like this one and like The Revenant. And Catch Me If You Can is a film that kind of caught me off guard because I always forget this one is a Steven Spielberg film. You know, Steven Spielberg, I know he's kind of has this kind of style, but I just wouldn't suspect that Leonardo DiCaprio would work with Steven Spielberg because he's only worked with him this one time. So that's why I always forget that this one is a Steven Spielberg film. And I always forget that this one is a true story because of how, you know, random everything is in it and how, like, unpredictable that it is, because Frank Abagnale Jr. got away with so much stuff. Now, I just wondered how he got away with all this. You know, it's such an interesting story how he was able to do it. He was a very smart man. That's how he got out of prison, you know, helped the FBI with everything. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing, but he just went on a crazy journey as a kid. It's kind of insane. You know, every kid wanted to live his life kind of in one way, I bet, when this movie when it came out. So I really did like the story of it, even though I hardly believe it, even though it is a true story. It's so hard to believe that all this happened to him. Leonardo DiCaprio was amazing. Amy Adams is in it for a little bit. She's really cool. But Tom Hanks, I think, is the winner of the film for me. I thought Tom Hanks was excellent. I love seeing hot Tom Hanks in this like supporting role, because I would say Tom Hanks was supporting and Leonardo DiCaprio was leading. So I love to see him in this kind of like supporting role. I think he played very well of Leonardo DiCaprio, and I love the kind of like chasing of the story. You know, Catch Me If You Can. They run away. They only talk on Christmas. But I will say, I think this one could have been like 15 minutes shorter. I think the third act dragged a little bit, but I will say it is a very great film. So Catch Me If You Can is going in the great tier. Next up, we got Titanic. This is one of my favorite romance movies, I would say. Titanic is one of those big epic movies that, you know, you only really get to see once in your life. And, you know, it's one of those movies that I just go back to a lot because the first watch was so big for me. The first watch is probably big for everyone because of how much money this movie made. Keeps making money because it keeps getting re-released. I saw this one on Valentine's Day of this year when it got like a 4K 3D remaster, and oh my goodness, seeing that in theaters for the first time was just such an experience. I think James Cameron knows how to make a movie theater experience kind of like a movie. And I thought seeing this on the big screen just made me love it even more. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I love it so much. I think it gets better on every single rewatch. I think the performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet are great. They have some amazing chemistry. I love their chemistry throughout the whole movie. This kind of like love story that starts off with just Leonardo DiCaprio seeing her, kind of not liking her at the beginning, and then he starts liking her, and then they both start liking each other. They can't really be together because he's kind of like the poor guy in this, and she's the rich girl, but they start to get together and all that, and like secret run around the whole ship. The ship is huge. I would say it's like one of the biggest ships I've ever seen in like a movie, and it's really cool how everything is made. The set design of this movie, costumes are really brilliant, especially the dance scene in this movie. I loved it so much. And I will say, I think this is one of the best paced movies of all time. I think it hits almost 3 hours. I think it's about 2 hours 45 minutes, and I never feel the runtime when I watch it, because you have these perfectly paced acts of the movie. The first act, you're just getting on there on the ship, getting adjusted. Second act, the second act is more of Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio kind of getting together and finding their relationship together. And then the third act is just the downfall, Titanic hitting the iceberg, everything just going wrong, everyone dying, everyone launching off the ship. It's insane story. It's an insane third act. I just wasn't prepared for it at all. But it's so sad. But the real question is, could Leonardo DiCaprio fit on the door? I think he could have. We always talk about that. And I think he could have fit. It's such an interesting thing, but I think he could have fit on the door. And I just love this movie. I love the romance of this movie. And I love how they stick together through the end, even when Leonardo DiCaprio's character dies. So Titanic, it's going in the amazing tier. I love it so much. Next up is The Departed, the Brooklyn film, The Departed. I think that this movie is spectacular. I think it's one of Martin Scorsese's best movies. And Leonardo DiCaprio, I think Leonardo DiCaprio isn't even like the main lead of this film. I would say Jack Nicholson is kind of the main lead of this film, because you start out the film with seeing Jack Nicholson, and his character is a big character throughout the film. And I gotta say, I love Jack Nicholson a lot. I think he might be one of my favorite actors of all time, but that has to do with The Shining. The Shining was a big movie for Jack Nicholson, and it shows how much I love his character and love him as an actor. And Matt Damon, he's in this one too. We all love Matt Damon. I think this might be Matt Damon's best movie. And Mark Wahlberg has maybe one of the best moments in cinema when there's the last 2 minutes of the movie was shooting Matt Damon's character. I was so happy when that happened, because I was just shocked when everything happened in the last 15 minutes. The last 15 minutes is some of the most shocking cinema I've ever seen. But I watched The Departed for the first time like 3 years ago, and I was just blown away by what this movie does with like twists and turns. And I haven't seen the original, because I know this one is a remake, so I haven't seen the original. Just wanted to let you guys know that. But this is the only film I think that Scorsese won Best Picture for, because this one did win Best Picture, which is kind of, I think, robbery, because I think Martin Scorsese, this isn't even his best film, even though I think it is amazing. I think he has a couple films that are better than this, but I think the script is so great. The pacing is terrific. I love the pacing of this movie, even though it is long. I really didn't check the runtime at all when I was watching it. It just flew by. So I love it so much. Departed going in the amazing tier. Next up, we got The Great Gatsby. I'm not going to spend too much on this one, because I don't really care for this one as a whole. I like the book a lot. I read the book in, I think it was my junior year of high school, and I thought the book was really cool. I think it was one of the best books I ever read in school. And the movie as a whole, it's a Baz Luhrmann movie, so it's going to be crazy. I don't think this one is, Baz Luhrmann's best film. I think Baz Luhrmann's best film is Elvis for me. I think Elvis works a lot. I think this one is also too crazy for me. He just goes so crazy with this one. You have the Kanye West song in this movie at the beginning and in the trailer. No one was expecting that. It caught me so off guard when I heard that, but I did like the performances. You got Tobey Maguire teaming up with Leonardo DiCaprio. They're real friends in real life. They're cool, and I think that Tobey Maguire being the lead of this one worked a lot. I didn't really care for the whole story of Great Gatsby in this one. I think it works better as a book as a whole. I didn't really care for it being made into a movie. So I would say that, even though the costume design is terrific, I think some of the best in a Leonardo DiCaprio film, I think the story as a whole just I don't really care about it being a movie, and the pacing is really poor in this one. I would say it's very long. I think too long for a Great Gatsby story. I think they could have cut it like 45 minutes. So Great Gatsby going in the okay tier. Next up, we got Inception, the only Leonardo DiCaprio film that he's worked with Christopher Nolan on. And Inception, I talked about this one in my Christopher Nolan ranking. I really do love Inception, but I don't think it's a perfect film like everyone else says. I love the whole dream aspect of it, you know, dream within a dream within a dream, or you can go into limbo if, you know, you die in your dreams. I think that is all very unique. I love the unique kind of original story that Christopher Nolan is trying to tell with this one. And I love the ambiguous kind of ending on this one. You know, he spins the top. You don't know if it went down or went up. You just see that he's happy. You know, he's back with his family. I really did like that a lot. I love the big cast in this one. You have a huge cast: Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, Leonardo DiCaprio, even more people in this one. It is a great cast, and I love the VFX in this one. The VFX were some of the greatest for the time, especially when you have those buildings like bending upside down. I thought that was terrific. I love the screenplay of this movie, but I thought that as much as I do love this movie, I thought, the middle of the movie, the second act, was a little slow for me. But the first act and the last act, how it opens and how it ends, I love how it leaves you with questions. It starts you off to asking questions, but it also leaves you asking even more questions. I think that's so interesting, but I do love the beginning of this film a lot and the end of it. I just love how fast paced it is at times, and I love how slow it is at times. I just love the dream aspect of movies. If you can include like cool dream aspects into your movies, I'll love it even more. So Inception going into the amazing tier. Next up is Shutter Island, another movie that's kind of based off a book for Leonardo DiCaprio. This is him with Martin Scorsese once again, and I love this movie. Every single time I watched it, I rewatched it for the second time just this past week, and I was a little bit worried going into it for the second time because when you watch this movie the first time, you don't really know what's happening. It's a mystery for a reason, and you get to that big twist and you're like, holy crap, he's not even who he says he is, and his wife killed their kids, and he's kind of in this mental institution. And it really works a lot. I think the twist works a lot. The ending works a lot too. Kind of like how Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he knows everything that's going on. He didn't actually regress. He just wants to die a good man. I really do like the ending a lot. I love how everything comes to fruition in the end. But I will say I was worried going into my second watch because I was worried, I already knew the twist. I already knew everything that was going on. So that's what kind of worries me about mystery movies. But it actually worked a lot for me on the second watch because you do see those subtle hints of everything going down. Martin Scorsese likes to put in these hints in these movies, and these hints were very subtle. But if you see in the movie, you can see these hints now in the beginning, especially the middle of the film, you can see the hints. And I think the twist even works so much more for me once you see those little hints and everything that's slowly going on with Leonardo DiCaprio's character in this one. And I will say, I love to see Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo teaming up. That was like kind of an unexpected pairing that I never thought I would have seen. But I love them working off each other. I thought they were both great. Ben Kingsley has a small part. Michelle Williams has a small part too. I think they're all great in this one. And I think that this Scorsese film might have one of his best scores. I really did love the score in this one, how it's kind of like small. And I think it really did work a lot. I just love the screenplay of this one. I will pick up the book eventually because this movie is just so cool. I bet the book is even cooler. So Shutter Island going in the amazing tier. Next up, we got The Revenant, another true story that Leonardo DiCaprio tackled about Hugh Glass, being stranded from his team. Tom Hardy's character kind of like almost killed him, but he killed his son. Tom Hardy in this one is so cool, but I will say in the beginning, I hardly had any idea what Tom Hardy's character was saying. I had to put on subtitles for this movie because I have no idea what he's saying. And, he's kind of like that when he was Bane. You have no idea what he's talking about, which I'm kind of glad I didn't see it in theaters because I would have had no idea what he was talking about. But I kind of was sad I missed it in theaters because the cinematography is probably some of the best I've ever seen. The shots were just so great. I was just blown away by what I was seeing on camera. This movie is like 2.5 hours. I think it was paced very well. The second act was a little slow for me at times, but I thought that it really worked out in the third act. It's kind of like a whole revenge story. Hugh Glass trying to get revenge for his son's murder, and he has to travel so far, so many distant lands to get back to his team, get back to his tribe. And I was really with him through this whole story. It was crazy. Everything that happened in this film, the bear attack. Oh my goodness, the bear attack is one of the most intense scenes I think I've ever watched. It's so impressive, everything that was going on in that scene. I think it's like a 5 to 10 minute scene. Everything going on there was crazy. Sound design of the bear, the VFX of the bear, just Leonardo DiCaprio's character Hugh Glass just getting torn apart by him, the shot shooting the bear, it's insane. I was just blown away. But one of the most insane things about this movie is kind of like how every scene is so fast paced. Like every action scene is like a one shot. You know, there are some hidden cuts in there, but the one shots of this movie are absolutely breathtaking. And I will say one scene that took my breath away was when Leonardo DiCaprio's character is riding a horse and then he rides off a cliff. I was not expecting the cliff to be there and so high. He rides off and then he basically falls down into the tree and then falls on the ground. He's hardly alive. Then he has to basically carve out a horse and basically sleep in its carcass to stay warm during the winter, because this movie basically just takes place all in the winter, all in the snow. That's why it's so beautiful to me, because these winter shots are always so beautiful. And I love the score. The score is very small, very simple, but I did love the score. But let me just say that cinematography is so excellent. The ending works so well for me. The Revenant, I really put off for a long time because I was worried I wasn't going to like its slow pace, but I really loved its slow pace. Just put it on during the winter, and you know, this is a very good winter film. It takes place all during the winter, so I would like it a lot if I put it during the winter. So I'm going to put The Revenant in the great tier. Next up is Django Unchained. I'm not going to talk about this one for a long time because I could talk about it for a long time. It's one of my favorites of all time. Quentin Tarantino is behind this one, and you know, I just love Quentin Tarantino so much. I love his style, love his direction. Just like Martin Scorsese, you know, they both have very fast-paced scenes, very fast-paced, you know, films. And I think this one is so excellent. I love Jamie Foxx. His performance in here, I think, is one of his best. Leonardo DiCaprio has a small supporting performance, but his performance in that third act is just insane. Samuel L. Jackson, they're kind of working together. They're the bad guys of the film. Jamie Foxx is the good guy. Django, as I would say, he goes on his first like revenge tour trying to find his wife, and it's a great story. Love the pace. As I said, the writing is spectacular. I think though the standout for me is the costume design and the set design. I thought the costume and sets were simply so cool, so out there, and I just wasn't prepared for how bright this movie was going to be, because this movie could have easily been a very dark film, you know, a revenge tale, but it goes for this comedic moments. You have Jonah Hill especially in those like KKK mask, so it goes for those comedic moments. You know, I do love how it goes for those two, because you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, he brings in a funny performance in here, and Jamie Foxx also has some pretty good lines. But it does start out pretty dark, but then it gets lighter and lighter. I really do love it so much. And that third act, ooh, that third act is so great. One of my favorites. Django Unchained, going in the amazing tier. The Wolf of Wall Street is next. Another one of my favorites. Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio team up. Once again, they team up, and every single one they team up in is a pretty great, amazing film. Except for Gangs of New York, I don't think it's amazing. But The Wolf of Wall Street has some very interesting discourse going on with it. You know, people say that if you think it's like one of your favorite movies of all time, they don't trust you because of how evil a person Jordan Belfort is, and you can't really trust a person that really likes the film a lot. I think that's kind of stupid. Just because you like a movie doesn't mean you're going to act like Jordan Belfort and be like this evil, sadistic, crazy minded man who just takes a lot of drugs and, you know, has sex with a lot of hookers. It's not like you're going to be like Jordan Belfort. I like this movie a lot because of how fast paced, how crazy this film is, how crazy the performances are. It's just such a cool movie. And, you know, maybe I would want to have this life one day, be rich like that, but I wouldn't really want to be unhappy, you know, how Jordan Belfort is kind of unhappy in this movie. You know, I feel like it's just kind of dumb how you can say that people can't have this film as one of their favorites just for that reason. There's so many different reasons why people love this film. I think one of them is Martin Scorsese in his direction here, and one of them is Leonardo DiCaprio, because I think this is his best performance of all time. What he did in this film was simply spectacular. I think he did talk to Jordan Belfort before this film to really get all the mannerisms down, so I was impressed with all this and how he was able to really act like Jordan Belfort. Because when you started the film, Jordan Belfort is kind of like a normal guy entering the stock market, being a stock trader with a wife, and then he just gets even crazier because the people he meets are crazy, and then, you know, all hell breaks loose in that second act when everything happens. You know, he meets Margot Robbie, everything goes wrong, takes so many drugs. I will say this film is probably Martin Scorsese's funniest film because of everything that's happening, the crazy moments. Jonah Hill's in this. Jonah Hill also has that crazy story how he only took $60,000 to be in the movie because he wanted to work with Martin Scorsese so much. I feel like that's something that you don't see much in Hollywood. People just wanting to work with directors and not want to be paid as much, because people want to be paid a lot. They just don't want to be, I like how Jonah Hill wanted to be with Martin Scorsese on this. He wanted to be in his film and he didn't care about the paycheck. That was really cool. One of my favorite scenes of all time in this film has to be when Leo and Jonah Hill's characters are just getting really high and it doesn't kick in for a while, and Leo has to go down the steps and he sees the steps and there's like so many more than there actually is, and he drives home like that and he has to lift the foot up to close the door. That scene just lives in my head rent free. I watch this film like 2 times a year. I just love it so much. It's so good. Every scene is so fast paced. I love how Martin Scorsese can pace the film, and this one is no exception. Some of the best 3-hour movies I've ever seen. Next up is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is another Quentin Tarantino film. Just came out in 2019, I think this was that it came out, and I absolutely love this film. I think it's kind of like a comfort watch, I would say. I watched it for the 3rd time just this past year to get ready for this video, and I think it does get better every time I watch it. I just love the feel of it. It's kind of like a summer film. I wouldn't say maybe a feel-good film. There's some moments in here that wouldn't really make me feel good, but I will say it's kind of a comfort film. It's one of those films that just goes by. You go through the life of everyone in this film, and it's one of those films that's really good. It has a really good pace, and it has a really good script, has a really good score too. One of my favorite moments of this is when Rick is using the flamethrower and he's like, "Damn, why is it so hot?" And he's like, "Rick, it's a flamethrower." And I'm like, it's so funny. I loved it so much. But the last 20 minutes of this movie is just all out insanity with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, of course, won the supporting actor performance for this. I think he deserved it. He had the most legendary performance in this movie. I will say my favorite scene from him in this movie is when he's fighting Bruce Lee. That was insane with the car and all that, how he threw him against the car. I know how some of this, he changed this story a lot. It's based off a true story very loosely. Tarantino's changed a lot of it. I know that. So I wouldn't say it's like a full true story, but I did enjoy the moments, they're trying to make it like a true story. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's another amazing film. Next up is Don't Look Up, Leonardo DiCaprio's newest film, kind of before Killers of the Flower Moon. I think this one came out in 2021, late 2021 on Netflix. I think this is Leonardo DiCaprio's first, straight to streaming kind of Netflix movie. I wonder why he did it, maybe for the paycheck and all that. But this film has a lot of discourse around it. It's a very divisive film I've seen, especially when it first came out. When it first came out, I thought it was great. But when I watched it again just this past week, I thought it was even better. I love how crazy this story gets. The characters are just insane. It's kind of like a true story, but it hasn't happened yet. That's the tagline of the trailer. I do kind of agree with it, because this is like our world in a sense. Some of these characters are like characters in our world. Mark Rylance, I think, though, his character is so creepy. Every time he was on screen, I was just creeped out a lot. But that's to show that Mark Rylance is a really fantastic actor and he can just turn on the switch that fast. Leonardo DiCaprio, I think that this is almost his funniest performance, but I think The Wolf of Wall Street is his funniest performance. But he was hilarious in this one. I loved his whole look too. He looked like an old guy, an old dad in this one, because he was a dad in this one. He had 2 kids in this movie. And Jennifer Lawrence, I thought she was great in this one. The duo of them was really cool. Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep. You have a lot of cool people in this one. You even have Kid Cudi and Ariana Grande. This movie has an all-star cast. Timothy Chalamet. This movie is just filled with Oscar winners, Oscar nominees, and I was just loving it. I was digging the whole film. The ending is so beautiful. I think Linus Sandgren is behind the cinematography for this one. He did cinematography for La La Land, Babylon, all those films. He's doing Saltburn this year. I cannot wait for that. But Don't Look Up, I eat it up every time I see it. I think it's really great. Love the story. I think Adam McKay just makes some great films like this, The Big Short, and I just love his script and screenplay every time he makes a film. So I will say Don't Look Up, I'm on the fence of liking it a lot, so Don't Look Up is going in the great tier. Alright, last up on our tier list is Killers of the Flower Moon, Martin Scorsese. It's the newest film, and this one basically is just a heartbreaking true story that I was very happy I saw. It's a very good learning experience for me because I wasn't taught about this story in school. As I said, very devastating what happened to the Osage people, and Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, did an amazing job in this film. I think this is one of his best performances. I don't think it's his best because I still think Wolf of Wall Street is his best performance, but this movie really just it just kind of like hit me hard, you know, harder than Oppenheimer, and Oppenheimer hit me really hard. But this one is just so much more dense. You know, Lily Gladstone was the heart and soul of this movie because her character is really the only good character in this movie, the only character that really has a pure soul in it. So seeing her in this movie was just excellent. I really need to look out for other movies because she was really amazing in this one. Robert De Niro has a very small role, but I really did like his kind of subtle performance here. But Jesse Plemons also had a pretty good supporting role in here. Really did like him a lot. This one's going to be a big Oscar kind of player this year, which I'm going to be very interested to follow up on how this one does, because you know there's three big Oscar players this year. It's Oppenheimer, Killers, and then Poor Things. Those are basically the main Oscar players this year. We'll see if anything else kind of matches those movies, but this movie, man, 3.5 hours, it flew by. If you're worried about the runtime, just go watch it in a theater. It's a big experience. You know, it reminded me of Oppenheimer. They're both over 3 hours. They're both just very dense movies that just take you into this story, take you into this time, and you just feel everything that's going on, and it just doesn't let up. You know, this movie doesn't let up, and I get why Martin Scorsese did it, but it's hard to watch. But I think it's still an amazing film. I think everyone should try to make time to at least watch this sometime in their life, because it's a very good learning experience for what happened to the Osage people, the terrible things. But with all that, Killers of the Flower Moon going in the amazing tier. So let's do our final ranking. On the okay tier, we got The Great Gatsby and Romeo and Juliet. Romeo plus Juliet, I guess you could say. You know, I think I'm going to leave it like that. I do like Romeo plus Juliet a little bit better than Gatsby. I think Gatsby just goes off the rails a little bit. The good tier, Gangs of New York, is the only one. I don't think I could put it in the great tier. It's just a little too long for me. The pacing is kind of all over the place. The great tier, that's where we get kind of interesting here. I'm actually going to move Catch Me If You Can down to the bottom, and then I'm going to put The Revenant on top, and then I'm actually going to do something very controversial here. Don't Look Up is going in second place. I have a lot of fun with that movie. I think I'm going to leave Aviator in third position. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then we're on to the amazing tier, where how many we got? We got 8 films up here, it looks like, and we got a lot to rank here. These are all such amazing films. Leonardo DiCaprio knows how to pick his films that he's in. He's a very fantastic actor. He's probably one of my favorites, but he's not beating Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling is my favorite. I'll probably do a Ryan Gosling tier list one of these days, but Leonardo DiCaprio is in like that second or third position. So let's do this. The amazing tier, probably first place for me. If we're only talking, I'm only talking film-wise. I'm not talking performance-wise. My favorite performance from him is The Wolf of Wall Street. Let's just get that out of the way. But film-wise, I would probably put The Wolf of Wall Street in first. Then I would go Django. And then I would probably, after that, go Departed. I would go Departed, Titanic. And then Shutter Island I can put in last. And then I'm going to put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then Inception and Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm coming off my first watch. I hope to watch it again this weekend. But Killers of the Flower Moon I will put over Inception. So that's my Leonardo DiCaprio movie tier list of all the ones I've seen. You know, he has a very great filmography. Killers of the Flower Moon, one of his best so far, I think. I think that's like my third favorite performance from him, because I think Wolf of Wall Street is his best. Then second place, I would probably put like Django or Titanic in second place, but Killers of the Flower Moon, he did great in that. So leave your Leonardo DiCaprio tier list kind of in the comments. Leave your favorite movies from him. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.